with light. Welcome back to Black, Youre, and White. I'm Bailey.
I'm Sandy.
And today we're talking about the ego.
Ooh.
All right, so to preface this a little bit, this video is filled with a lot of hard truths. And if you get angry, that means that it's working. So just remember that when you're a little bit hate fire at me in the middle of the video. So just remember. So today you're talking about Dr. Dyer.
Yeah, Dwayne Dyer. And he has a bunch of books. This one is the one that was my favorite. And
Spiritual Solution to Every Problem.
Yes. And so we come to the ego, right? Our ego, there's a lot of studies on the good of an ego, the
good and bad, right?
There's good, bad.
There's a pro and con list. Your ego, that's for sure. It's a very strong motivator, right? There's a lot of good things that come along with it. Today we're going to be focusing on the bad things, so just pump up for that.
Yeah, because I haven't read on the other part. I do know there's a bunch of documentation out there. I just haven't read it. So today there was a point in here, and Dr. Dyer says that when you come in a conflict, your ego is what keeps going. So you always want to prove you're right, right? So
because we always are.
I know. I can remember my poor husband when we first got married. He wasn't doing it the right way.
There's only one way,
which was my way,
Sandy's way.
And so, bless his heart, I would tell him the right way to do it, and he didn't listen. So I felt I wasn't communicating strong enough, so I found a different way to communicate the same thing, and maybe a third time, and maybe a fourth time, or a fifth time, to tell him how my way is the right way. And what I learned in here is just to stop, just to let it go. Why are you the question is, why do you need to tell someone it's
what do
the
you
right
have to
way?
prove?
What do you have to prove? Yeah. What is that? And his one of his solutions is just to say, you're right. Ooh, that was a tough one for me.
And even just saying that somebody else is right, makes me a little bit angry. So that just goes ahead and tells me that I need to work on that. So through the self-help books that I've read, I find that the angrier I get, the more right they are, which is a very frustrating circle to be in. Let's tell you what. So a book that I read, it says, usually when you're extra frustrated with something, that's a message that you need to fix that same thing within yourself, which just don't like to hear that, right? We don't like to hear that. But then I started to look into it, and it was right, which I don't approve of, don't have anything to do with it. But once you start to let that ego go and you start to let others hold their space and not need to fight about it, your life is a lot less struggle, a lot less stressful, a lot less, you don't get your panties in a wad every time somebody tries to do something different. You allow people to live and let live.
Yep. It's really an amazing place. So part of that just means, so I started is when we'd have a conversation, and if I disagreed, I did not verbally say, you're right. I just say it in my mind.
We don't want to give them the satisfaction yet. We're working into that, right? We don't want to start.
It was little baby steps. And even then it was hard to say it in my mind, and surprising, I don't know if this is right, but even in your mind, it was hard for me to swallow that pride or the ego and say that. But I had to ask myself, what's the point if I kept talking about it to say what I felt was right? What would the end results be? Because there's probably some times where you want to keep...
Right, is that your hill to die on? If it is, then, die on it.
Go for it.
If it's something to do with a boundary or something like that, something strong that you really believe in, then by all means, you need to stand up for this. Mainly what we're talking about is work fights with your partner, even... I'll go in a store and the checkout clerk will be tell me something different. And it's well, instead of sitting there and arguing or doing, explaining my point, what do I win from that? What good does that do besides, number one, piss them off, get spit in my food, whatever, right? do whatever, or I can just let them believe that they're right, let live, and then all of a sudden my day is a lot less stressful.
And so that's one technique, is just learning to say you're right. And and it's funny because
it was with the cookie. We've already talked about the cookie, so
yes.
Which is the person, not the loved food. So just
exactly.
differentiate in your mind.
My work hiccup. And so what I started just saying in my mind is, you're right. And I did have to do it to get to a graceful place. I had to, the name comes along like in my mind, email, thought process, telephone call, I would just start with saying, you're right. Then what happens, it took me a couple of months before I could say it out loud, to actually verbalize the words. But now I'll say it, and my family will be like, oh, right, like the double psychology thing. They'll be like, sure.
and I can tell you, because I fought with my partner, and of course I'm right. So there's no reason for me to say that. But no, in all honesty, we were having an argument like people do, and when I said you're right, it de-escalated so quickly that I was still in fighting mode. Like I wasn't done, and he was, just by that small validation. Which that's when it clicked for me, where like, okay, there's something to do here, and then once the anger's gone and the ego's out, you're actually able to have a conversation. And it's not an argument, and then both people are able to express their feelings and come to a mutual agreement. Mm-hmm. You just had a phone call today where a gal was being a little rude skins. She was wrong. So just to start, she was wrong, and my mom went in.
So I started work today at 8:30, and at 8:35 I was spitting nails. So just to tell you how that was going, yeah, it was a day to learn patience again. And so Bailey actually was here. We get together each morning, and she was here, and she goes, because she could see I was coming in hot, because she was wrong.
When you're escalated, it's hard to bring it back down.
It was. But when I got on the phone, right, I did a self-check. I took a couple of breaths and then called her, and not picking or pointing blame.
She didn't start out feisty, right? Like she started out gentle, which is a good way to handle it.
It was. And surprisingly, the person, they apologized for the mistake. Didn't realize it.
And so not only did she not get her panties in a wad when she went to have the conversation with him, but she actually apologized. So like
win.
All in a circle. And so I'm reading Ego by Eric Tolhart. And what he talks about is, he says your ego is a whole nother part of you. And right, the good things. It motivates you. It holds you to your standards. It makes you want to achieve things. But the problem is that we associate with the ego, and so we identify that our ego is us. And when you identify so solidly with something like that, it leaves you in a lot of trouble, because you can't let things go, because it rocks your identity. So separating from that and letting people just be right. Like, what is it? Let them win.
It's okay.
What is that? What are you losing by doing that? Besides, like, I can tell you what you're gaining: sanity. That's what you gain by stopping,
calm.
All those fights. And I still struggle with it. I just left a work situation that wasn't my favorite. And I was having, we were having a meeting about everything. And I actually had to take a step back, and every time they said stupid things, right? Like, just stupid things were flying out of their mouth, right? I heard it. But you know what I did is I just sat back and I said, you're right. Because you know what? Those are their feelings, and they're valid because they're feeling them. So instead of escalating, I'm just going to de-escalate, because I don't have to be right. I'm all right. I can get my peace knowing where I stand and knowing what my feelings are without having to, I don't have anything to prove, is I guess
I think it's great
where that went to.
And that's when you can get to that point. And I'm not saying it's easy by any means. But
no, I mean, even when my mom told me this, to say you're right, I tried to say it, and I couldn't. I was like, oh, it's not going to work for me today. Work up to it.
And not even just saying it verbally, but mentally, just to say someone is right. And I mean, you may even try it with the television. If you're disagreeing with someone on TV, start there. But that's your challenge this week.
Yeah, we challenge you. Let
Just
us know
once.
how it goes. And also, let's bring some more positives to the video. Why don't you comment down below and leave me some more positives of what the ego does, since we're all about what it good, bad. Ooh, since we're all about what bad it does, why don't you go ahead and leave some positivity and let us know the positive things about an ego.
So scroll down all the way to the bottom. Leave us your comments, and we'll figure those out. And
blackgrayandwhite1@gmail.com. Thanks, guys. Sending light and love.